So the last servant on the chopping block over here on the JP version of the game for our Halloween event is the free-to-play Liz, which, by the way, your boy just wants to take that little victory lap and saying our prediction was correct. We got the Cinderella Liz prediction right, which I really don't think it actually was that big of an accomplishment. I think we all saw this coming a mile away, but I'm still taking the credit for being right. All right, I'm still taking that victory lap. But now we have the question of the servant is in the game, but is she any good? And that's quite a difficult question to ask because I think she's decent as a free-to-play servant, but I don't think she's really going to be making any waves in people's boxes. Like, she might be nice for newer players, and if you really like her design and her skills, maybe you really like the event and her lore, she's definitely usable, but I don't see her being super broken. I just see her as being like a really solid servant that you can get and that is worth grinding. But after getting somebody like Ruler Da Vinci, who's basically just an omni support and fits into any team comp, it's a little bit of a letdown. But again, still regardless, she's a very, very solid servant, and I do recommend people still farm her if you are playing the JP version of the game, and to be a little hyped if you're on the NA version of the game. Now, before we begin, make sure you smash that like and that subscribe button. What are you doing? Your boy is uploading FGO content every single day, and he's on that long and arduous journey to 100K, and the least you could do is give him a little bit of supplies on the way for his journey. So give him that like and that subscribe, maybe even potentially click that join button if you're feeling a little extra feisty. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into Elizabeth, starting off with her hits, which her hits really aren't all that great. Now, the star gen on her quick card, I will admit, is a little deceptive. She has a 9.1% star gen stat with a 4-hit quick card. She does have an insane Writing EX passive that's giving her 12% quick performance just passively, which is not only buffing the damage of the quick card, it's also buffing up the NP gain and the star gen stats of said quick card. So it's actually a little better than it looks. But because they went with a more 2 bust or 2 art setup, you're really not going to be feeling the power of said quick cards. Her NP charge per attack is actually really good. Her NP gain at 0.87% is actually really high. The unfortunate thing is that she only has 2 arts cards with 2 hits each, meaning that if you're able to get crits on said arts card, you'll really pop off and loop your NP pretty effectively. But if you're not maintaining those crits, you're going to be in a bit of a rough patch. Thankfully, Liz does have a number of things in her skills to help out with NP gen and star gen and all that good stuff. So she does kind of fix any of these issues in the skills that we'll talk about in a little bit. But the one thing that you cannot fix is that extra attack only being at 4 hits. Now, if you're new to the ZTL channel, maybe you don't know what the extra attack does, and let me inform you, it's a composite card that gens stars, NP, and does big boy damage. 4 is basically the average that I want to see on an extra attack, but that doesn't mean it's the gold standard. The gold standard is the 5-hit extra attack. That makes Brave Chains with said servant hit just that much more different, and it's really a shame that she doesn't have 5 or more, because Liz has a very high natural NP gain stat, and that actually allows the extra attack to really shine, because unfortunately the extra attack has one weakness, and that is that it cannot crit. So it's very reliant on very high base statistics, which Liz does have for NP gain. But enough about that, let's go ahead and start talking about the skills, and you'll notice each one of the skills has very powerful effects, but they all come with a demerit. Now, don't be too worried about the demerits. Liz also has something in the back pocket to deal with all those nasty little debuffs that she's putting on herself. First and foremost, you have skill 1. This is essentially the skill that you could probably have up at all times. It's giving her 3 hits of invincibility that lasts for 3 turns. So basically think of it kind of like the Coup Dodge skill, except it's on a timer, but it's with invincibility, which means your Liz is going to be pretty safe in a lot of scenarios. And the reason you want to have this up at all times is because it's giving her an additional 30% NP gain for 3 turns. So that means she's massively buffing up how well she's going to be buffing her NP, and it should be very easy, especially if you're getting crits, to refund that NP. And because the invincibility is hits based and it lasts a few turns, it does mean that you're probably not going to waste any of those invincibilities. Now, you do want to kind of time it properly. You don't want to just waste this turn 1 unless you absolutely know you can just start getting crits and start popping off, because you do maybe want to pop this maybe when you see that the enemy has 1 or 2 ticks left until they pop their NP, so that way you still have this around just in case they try to catch you off guard with said NP, or if you're running her with like Merlin or somebody that can kind of keep her protected, because at the end of the day she is a buster servant. So if you're running with someone like Merlin, you can give her that extra layer of protection, then you can kind of use this haphazardly. That's only though if you want to fully take advantage of the NP gain part of the skill. Ignore the poison. One, it's not even all that much poison damage. Again, if you're running with Merlin, Merlin's going to counteract that with his passive healing on his NP. And 2, she has something in the back pocket to cleanse said debuff. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Moving on to skill 2, this is going to be her main damage skill, as it's going to be giving her a 30% buster buff for 3 turns and giving her a special damage mod against wild beast enemies, and that is going to last for 3 turns, and she's getting a 50% damage mod against them. So nothing super insane. It's not like the 150% damage mod that some other servants may have, but that little extra 50%, do keep in mind, is multiplying into that buster buff. So if you're fighting any wild beast, you're basically having that 30% buff multiplying to the 50% buff to give you a lot of damage against them. And the wild beast is the same one that Super Orion and Proto Lancerku have, so just keep in mind she can fight the same enemies. And just ignore that she's lowering her defense. Again, we have something for that in the back pocket. Moving on to her third skill, which I kind of think is what brings her together. This skill is going to be dropping 30 stars for Liz to start playing around with, and it's going to be giving her a 30% battery, but it's going to seal her skills for 1 turn on a 4-turn cooldown. So this is something that you can kind of burst very often, which I really like. The 30 stars and the 30% NP gauge is very solid because, again, she doesn't really have a way to provide stars for herself, and she's very reliant upon getting crits on her arts cards to really refund her NP a lot. So the fact that she can just dump stars basically every 4 turns is really, really good, and it's a hefty amount of stars as well. Keep in mind she's also a rider, so she has very high natural star weight. And then even if you're missing out on some of the arts crits, she can kind of make up for it for the fact that she has a 30% battery. Now, you do want to use this skill last because it has the skill seal slapped on it. But if for whatever reason you don't want to waste the other skills and you just want to use this one turn 1, well, if we just turn around and look at Liz's NP, she has a debuff cleanse on this skill. So if for whatever reason you just want to pop skill 2 and then skill 3 right after that, because maybe you want to save the NP gain and you want to save some of the invincibility hits for later, don't worry, you'll cleanse it immediately and you don't have to worry about any of the debuffs. So that's kind of the idea with this new Liz, is that she has very just generally powerful, decent skills that come with some little minor debuff, but she's able to get rid of them herself, which I think is very solid. And then she's also increasing the attack of Fairy Tail servants on our overcharge by 20 to 40% depending on overcharge for 3 turns. And there are some pretty decent servants in Fairy Tail. It doesn't look like there's a whole massive, just sprawling list of servants there. But do keep in mind that this is proccing first, so this Liz should be hitting pretty decently hard, because you have a 30% buster buff multiplying into a 20% attack buff at bare minimum, and she's a free NP5 servant. Although do keep in mind you are going to really want to go after that free NP5 because her natural attack is quite low, like it barely cracks 9,000, so do just keep that in mind. For some of you curious, some notable shoutout servants from the Fairy Tail category would be like Melusine, she's a very top tier good servant. Ushiwakamaru and Habitrat are free-to-play servants that are very good that you can try to take advantage of this with. I don't know what team comp you'd be running Ushi and Elizabeth in, but I mean, if you want to run it, pop off. Benny Enma and Kentoki are both also really solid servants that are in this category. Miss Crane is a decent support type servant that's in this category. So if you want to like beef up your support Miss Crane before you swap her out, I guess, you know, you could have her in there. But there's definitely like a little bit of things you could do in here. There's also the free-to-play god, Kentoki Rider, obviously. So if you have him on JP, you already have the basis for like some weird free-to-play meme team, you know? But regardless, I think she's solid. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can see that, yeah, she seems decent, but nothing too groundbreaking, nothing too super insane. Especially after we just got somebody like Ruler Da Vinci, who again is like a very just omni support type servant that's splashable in pretty much any team comp. Or after in like some of the previous years, we got people like Shiki, Kentoki Rider, Chloe, you know, she's not like this S tier new crazy free to play servant. But I think if I had to tier her somewhere, I think she'd probably fall more in like the low A tier or like mid A tier when it comes to free-to-play servants, because I definitely think she has the same usability as someone like Berserker Jalter, especially with just how generally good all of her skills are. She can stay around with her first skill. You know, being able to just drop 30 stars and have a 30% battery is also immensely useful. So again, I just think this servant is all around just super solid. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you think of this new Liz servant? And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Alate, guys.